Welcome back, everybody, to Photography Tips and Tricks, your show for gear, tips, inspiration, anything that you're going to need to take your photography to the next level. My name is RC, and this week we're going to start it off with the incomparable Mr. Moose Peterson, who's got a great tip on exposure compensation. Take a look.
Hey folks, Moose Peterson here. I'm going to give you a small tip, something to think about when it comes to exposure. Now, you have all these dials on the camera. So when I first leave each day, I've already kind of set them to, you could say, a null point or a 0 point. So when I'm out shooting, I don't have to, I'm looking at the scene, I'm looking at the light. I don't have to look at the camera to think about exposure compensation. I know it's already at 0, and by depressing the button, I can rotate the dial and put in the compensation that I want. And that's the really important part, is that compensation. Now, my photographs, typically people always say, how come they look so sharp? And why have I got such color saturation? It's really simple. Exposure compensation. It's free. You ain't got to pay for it. It's already built in the camera. You just got to use it. Now, what does it do for you? When you underexpose, instantly you're changing the curve of that image. And in that underexposure, you saturate the colors. That's the first benefit. The next thing, any highlights that might be on the edge, like they might be blowing out, you might protect those, slight benefit. But the blacks, when you're underexposed, you push them down to blacker. And that's a big benefit because black is so important to our vision. So a couple of things that black brings to us. First of all, when the eye goes out and looks at different scenes, it says if that's black, that must be that shade of blue. If that's black, it's that shade of red. It will go back and forth. So when you give it that solid black in your picture, your colors now look even more vibrant. So underexposure gives you saturation colors and gives you that great black. At the same time, that black gives you this great edge. And that edge, your eye goes to that edge and says, if that's an edge like that, it must be sharp. And it will trick the eye into thinking things are sharper than they really are. So if something is free or in a camera, underexposure has all those great benefits. All you got to do is take advantage of it.
Horse racing is kind of a magical event to me. I mean, it's like stepping back in time. There's no other sport that allows you to step back into nostalgia than horse racing. The sport has not changed in like 50 years. You get these great characters, and I'll tell you, there's that anticipation, that quiet time as all the horses get loaded into the gates. Then everything goes quiet across the whole track. The entire crowd is silent. And all of a sudden, you hear the bells ding, and they're off. They just like charge out of there. On my next Kelby training class, we're going to be going to the racetrack, photographing horse racing. It's going to be great. We're going to be covering pan action, stop action. We're even going to be using remote control cameras. Be taking in an entire documentary of horse racing, from horses training early in the morning, beautiful shafts of light across the track that they come to the thunder of the finish line. I mean, we're going to cover all that on this video. I hope you join me then.
Welcome back, everybody. RC here at Photography Tips and Tricks. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about the limits that you have when you're working with bracketing on a camera. But before I do, we've got Mr. Rick Sammon talking to us a little bit about workshops, expectations to have in workshops. Always great information. Take a look.
Hey, Rick Sammon here. Here's a quick tip for everyone who's going on a workshop. Set a specific goal. Just don't go on the workshop and say, hey, I'm going to get great shots. If you set a specific goal, you'll get a higher percentage of pictures that you like. For example, I was just out in Death Valley. My goal, and I shared this goal with the students, was to get great black and white photographs, not just color photographs. And in that situation, when you're looking for black and white, you're looking for tones rather than colors. So you're not going to be enamored with the great sunrise or sunset. So set specific goals. And if you want more tips, check out my classes on Kelby training. Light, the main element in every photograph, and composition, the strongest way of seeing. Okay, back to you in the studio.
Now, let's get and spend a little bit of time talking about bracketing in your camera. This is something that somebody had emailed in and they said, listen, I could use some help on something. Basically, they were taking a series of pictures and they noticed that when they were doing these brackets, right, and they were doing it for HDR, they noticed that the last portions of the pictures were almost exactly the same. So it's happened to me. Don't worry about it. Let me show you what we're talking about here. I'm going to swing back over to this one section, and I made a folder called Don't Be Greedy, because that's what happens to me when I'm trying to do this. I'm out there taking pictures, and I'm at a location, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to make the most amazing HDR. I set everything down, I get everything organized, and I start taking pictures, and I'm like, I want these pictures to be the best pictures as possible, right? So exposure deals with shutter, ISO, aperture. Right? Those are the three components that you have. So when you're doing HDR, what you're doing is you lock your aperture. So you set an aperture priority. Because you don't want that to vary, what you want is your shutter to vary. Right? You want your aperture to stay the same so that the depth of field doesn't change on you. So that's pretty much blocked. But then you get there and you're like, well, I want a really, really nice shot. So what do you want to do? You want to shoot f16, f22. You want to make sure that everything is exactly sharp. So you'll set it to the highest aperture that you have. Then you turn around and you go, oh, you know what? I don't want any noise whatsoever, so I'm going to shoot to the lowest ISO that I have. So you're going to shoot at, let's say, 200 or 100 or 50, whatever it is that you have that's really, really low. So you have a really low ISO. You have an aperture that's completely locked, that's really, really, really small, so f22. And now you start taking shots, and you notice the base exposure that you have is like half a second. And already you know you're going to run into a problem. This is what happens. So I tend to shoot, when I'm shooting HDR, I do what's called shooting for the basement. I'm at a location and I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to get to this location again, so I'm going to shoot the snot out of it. I don't want to look at the technical side of it. If my camera does 9 exposures, that's what I'm going to do, because I want to make sure that I have enough information. So here's my information on this side right here. If you take a look, I have all of this information inside of that doorway. I've got stuff inside of these walls. That looks pretty decent. I've got all of this, and I'm like, well, that looks wonderful. I think we're in a good spot there. But as you get to the other exposures, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But look at 6, right? So 5's okay. That's this one right here in the middle. And now look at 6, look at 7, look at 8. Exactly the same, no change. So what's the problem? Well, this is what's happening to you here. If you go over to the desktop, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these files and I'm going to open them inside of Bridge, because Bridge is going to let me see what's happening here. I highlight one of these, I'm going to just get rid of this, and you'll see that right here you have a really, really, let's see right here, 2.8. What am I looking for? I'm looking for 7200. So that all looks pretty good. Now, watch what happens as I start moving across, right? As you start moving across, what you're going to notice is that that information you're shooting and your shutter speed is longer and longer and longer, but it will hit a specific limit. You're not going to be able to see something after a specific amount. So look, right here. We start f19, 400 ISO, 1 second. You'll continue, and you're keeping your eye right here on this upper right-hand quadrant. So 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds. Then after 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. What's happening is that all of these cameras that you have a limit when you're working with them. So it says when you're bracketing, you're setting an aperture priority, I'm not going to go past 30 seconds. So if you set yourself up at a really low ISO and you set yourself up with an f-stop that's like f19 or f22, you're going to hit that edge of that exposure. You're not going to be able to do it. So it'll just continue, it'll get to 30 seconds and it won't go past that. There are programs that you can use to be able to kind of counteract that, right? You can use a program like Cam Ranger, right? It's this thing that you can plug into the camera to be able to do that. But that's a separate device, and while that's a wonderful device, what I would suggest to you is to do a couple of different things. If you change that ISO from, let's say, 400 to 800, that can get you into a position where all of a sudden you can do all of the exposures that you want, and these last two that you'll have right there won't bump into that 30-second limit. The other thing that you can do is you can take down that f-stop, right? So instead of f19, come down to f11. If you come down to f11, these things are far enough away from you in this area right here. It's far enough away from you that you're going to get some pretty decent sharpness from here to that background at f11. You'll be okay, right? I'd even go so far as to making a couple of shots because you're nailed down on a tripod, so you may as well focus on, in this case, I would do a couple of series of these. I would do one where you have this in focus, right, and do a series of 9, and then do one where this is in focus over here by the graffiti and do a series of 9 there. Take those two, make 2 HDR files if you really want those things to be, super, super in focus, and then you just stack the 2 merged files together, and that way you have absolutely guaranteed a great amount of tonal range as well as a great amount of focus. It's a good way around it. And at the end of the day, if this is a shot that you think is worth it, wouldn't you want to do that? So hopefully that answers your question. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to you guys about the contest and a prize. Stick around.
Here at Kelby Training, we have hundreds of classes and thousands of lessons on all kinds of photography techniques, from beginners to advanced. But if you're just starting out, maybe unboxing your first DSLR, you may not have a clue where to begin. What if you had an opportunity to learn from world-class photography instructors exactly what you need to get started? From the very beginning, with help all along the way, Kelby Training now can give you just that. We're launching an innovative new tool for beginners called Beginners Start Here. It'll lay the foundation needed to understand your camera and walk you through how to capture beautiful images. And the best part is, all you have to do is tell us a little about yourself, such as your camera manufacturer, your DSLR model, and what you're interested in. And we'll design a custom curriculum to help you take your photography to the next level. It's the perfect way to learn at your own pace, on your own time. Plus, with a subscription, you get access to our online training wherever you are, so you can replay specific clips or even repeat the entire class if you'd like. We'll take you step by step, right through the process, so you can start taking good images in no time. And as you grow, we have a huge library of classes on all different kinds of photography techniques that can help you take your photography beyond the basics. So if you're just starting out and itching to turn that mode dial to something other than auto, then this is for you. And we're passionate about teaching you how, every step of the way. Start here at kelbytraining.com.
Welcome back, everybody. RC here for Photography Tips and Tricks. I've got a website I want you to take a look at and our contest. The website that I want you to take a look at is from my friend Karen Hutton. Karen Hutton is on Google Plus and has some wonderful, wonderful pictures. Take a look at this here, the Bay of Emeralds and Lake Tahoe, California. I'm going to click on this one. I got to tell you, I really want to be in Lake Tahoe. It's just great, great work. I think she does some phenomenal stuff there, and I absolutely love the work that she's doing. So if you want to follow her there. You can also follow her at her website, KarenHuttonPhotography.com. So there's your website to watch for this week. Now, let's see here. I want you to take a look at something else. I want you to take a look at this website, KelbyTV.com. You want to go to Photography Tips and Tricks. You want to find this episode. Now this episode, I'll get it for you in a second. I think it's 26, if I'm not mistaken, or 27. It's actually 27. So go to episode 27. Once you get to episode 27, go all the way down to the bottom, right? All the way down to the bottom. At the very, very bottom, we'll get there, sorry. Put your name, put your email, put your website, and leave us a comment. Tell us what you want to see. Tell us what you don't want to see. If you have a question, leave it for us there. Our producers are going to pick one person, and that person is going to win the iPad for Photographers 2nd edition, Master the Newest Tool in Your Camera Bag by Jeff Carlson. Thank you very, very much, Peachbit, for the book and the opportunity for one of you guys to be able to win it. So that pretty much wraps it up for us for this week. Make sure if you have an idea, you have a question, let us know. This is your show, and we're happy to be able to bring it to you. My name's RC, and I'll see you guys next week.